and welcome to episode 9, season 2 of the Van Dyke Mortgage WC Sports Podcast, brought to you by Durgan Insurance Group. I'm Scott DeCamp, one of the co-hosts of this podcast, and I have with me fellow co-host Ken Byard. Hi, Ken.
Good morning.
And a new guest / co-host, if you'd like to be a co-host, Brian Beebe. He's been asking me for quite a while when these friendship benefits were going to kick in. I'm getting him on the pod again. So welcome.
I didn't know this was a benefit. I apologize to everybody who expected to see a much younger man in Tate. This is what Tate, this is what you have to look for in 20 years. So enjoy your youth, please.
Yeah, maybe a little on the downside in the looks department, but the voice is great. You got a good voice.
Thank you.
So you bring a lot to the table that way.
Face for radio.
Well, you don't think I haven't been told that, Ken.
So, athletic director at Whitehall High School. We'll get more into that a little bit later here. But obviously, all joking aside, this man knows his stuff inside and out. He just, I've always told him that he might disagree, but he might have missed a calling in the broadcasting realm. He would have been really good at that, I think. But it's never too late.
Never too late.
Follow your dreams.
Yeah. So, but anyhow, welcome, Brian. Thanks for joining us.
Yes,
appreciate
thank you.
that. Tate Stein, who's been a co-host of our show, has got bigger and more important things to do now. He's not that he won't ever be back on the podcast. The plan is to bring him back, but he's a student at Muskegon Community College where he's also playing basketball, and he started a new class today. That's at the time when we record this podcast. So he's taking a little break from that, and he's playing ball for MCC, as I said. So he's starting to get really busy right now. Season's right around the corner. So and we'll talk about that a little bit more as well as Brian here has some experience at MCC and with Gene Gifford and everything too. So,
yeah, Tate's in for a great experience. He's very lucky the MCC's lucky to have Coach Gifford back in the mix for sure.
Mm-hmm. No question. So, before we dive into this, we have to thank our sponsors. Without whom we wouldn't be able to produce this kind of content. First off, we'll start off with Grieve Law. West Michigan Joint Divorce Lawyers, Big Stone Therapies, Green Ridge Realty with Chris Dykman and Sarah Reel, North Grove Brewers, Foundation Systems of Michigan with John Botten, Coldwell Banker with the extremely, I know he said jacked last week.
Yoked.
Swole, David Dusenberry, Scheid Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. And then, of course, special thanks to our title sponsors, Van Dyke Mortgage Lakeshore, whose commitment to finding you the right home loan is second to none. Their experienced licensed team is ready to help ensure you a smooth and timely loan process from application to closing. Check them out at 460 West Western Avenue in Muskegon, or give them a call at 231-332-6500. And then, of course, Durgan Insurance Group. They look at success through a different set of lenses, placing their relationship with their clients first. Regardless of what stage you're in life, they're there for you each step of the way to help you out. You can check them out in their office at 1535 Fire Road in Norton Shores, or call them Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 at 231-744-9106. So we talked about how Tate's too busy for us now. He's got bigger and better things going on. Playing basketball for MCC. I don't know how much experience or what you know about MCC sports, MCC hoops, but as we alluded, Gene Gifford, Shelby native and former Ravenna teacher, so he's got West Michigan Conference ties. I think, Brian, you've got some experience there. Didn't you used to call games for MCC?
I did. So Mr. Gifford was also our social studies teacher in high school. I call him Mr. Gifford still. He'd probably not happy with that. He's a phenomenal guy. I mean, and he's got a wealth of experience. He's coached at Olivet, Aquinas. I mean, he's the MCC athletic director for years and years, and came back to the sideline this year when they were in need. And Tate's lucky to have a guy like him that's got that much experience on the bench, because that college basketball season it's a marathon and a sprint at the same time. And at the 2-year level, having coached at that level, it's a different team every year. You're constantly in a recruiting cycle. So you really have to build a good culture. You have to build a program that kids want to be a part of. And he's done that before. And I'm very confident Tate's going to have a great experience playing for Coach Gifford this year for sure.
So did he come out of retirement, or was he at Olivet prior to this?
No, he was at Aquinas for a number of years as an assistant coach. Okay. I don't know if and you know Coach as well as I do probably. I don't know if retirement is necessarily ever in his vocabulary. It isn't probably for a lot of coaches. Right. I don't think he was certainly actively looking for it from the conversations I've had with him, but it was just a great opportunity for him. And he's got, Sue, his wife, is awesome. He's got grandkids that he spends a lot of time with, but I think that he was excited about it the last time I spoke to him about the opportunity for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you played football at Hope, right?
I did. And baseball, yep.
Yep. And I played baseball at Muskegon Community College for a year and a half. And one of the names that I recall, and I'm just throwing it off the top of my head, but I'm old because that was about 30 years ago. Shows you how old John Ronkham is too, though, because he used to work on my arm with the ultrasound machine, with the gel and everything. After throwing whatever, he'd put some, just kind of do his magic on my arm.
I feel like we could do a whole show on John Ronkham.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Let me tell you something. There's a lot of area coaches and players who would love the podcast After Dark with and about Ronkham. There's no doubt about that.
There'd be a lot of censoring, but I think you could get to the content through the censoring.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But Billy would be busy. It'd be a couple days for him.
I don't want to think about anything After Dark with John Ronkham. I'm sorry. My mind's not going there. I'm sorry.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. So I was an assistant women's coach at MCC. I coached at Glen Oaks, a school in that league, and having some experience in that league, Muskegon's athletic program, and with Mr. McDermott as the athletic director right now, that's a phenomenal place for kids to go. Outside of the Muskegon Promise, you really get a sense of travel, of what the college experience is like. Having played there, it's a great experience for kids. And I'm lucky enough. I taught there, I coached there, I attended there. I can't say enough about the MCC experience, and the kids in Muskegon County and in our area have a great set of experiences and great academic areas, a lot of hands-on majors that they can either apply to a 2-year degree or go from there. This wasn't meant to be a commercial for them, but I can't say enough good things about the school. So
yeah, and their athletic department continues to grow. Right, they added track a few years ago, soccer. I've always wondered how successful they would be when community colleges in Michigan had football, if they could put together a decent little football team that would have been competitive with GRCC or something like that.
Yeah, think about that team, what that team might look like. Yeah, that'd be interesting. Where would they play their games?
Somewhere with turf.
You're going to die on that hill, aren't you? Speaking of, North Muskegon's not an option right now, but
maybe in the future. The home of Jayhawk football.
That logo would be great. That Jayhawk, instead of dribbling that basketball, carrying the football with a fake helmet on top of it, would be a great logo.
I'm telling you. They'd get some kids, too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Great. GRCC, when they had it, when they were the last one standing, and their costs were just, Cody, when Cater played there, their travel was crazy, their costs were crazy, but they were carrying tons of kids. And I think when MCC probably had it, I'm sure there wasn't a school with turf at that point in the area. Shores didn't have it yet. I'm sure of that.
So one of the jokes that Gene would make, I think in class, he goes, "I'll leave your tickets at the door if we want to go to his games." Well, MCC games are free. So
always giving.
Yeah. So
he's a giver.
So as promised, welcome back to the podcast, Brian Beebe. Just wanted to talk a little bit about what you've got going on now as the Whitehall Athletic Director. I know that's a never-ending job for any AD, and what's it like these days? A lot of exciting things going on with Whitehall right now, with the football team and all the other sports. It just seems like Whitehall's in a really good place as far as that goes.
Yeah, our fall sports are in a really good spot, and we're lucky. We've got veteran coaches really up and down the line that have programs in a good place. I was at the girls golf finals this weekend on Friday. We finished 12th in the state in D3 with only one senior out of the 6 that played. Bill Borgman and James Hams did a great job. Our junior Ava Garcia finished 30th in the state. We had a pretty solid, very good a group of kids. Ludington in the league won our regional and finished, I think, 8th or 9th. I don't remember exactly where they finished in the regional, but we had a good finish there. Boys cross country won the city for the second consecutive year. Andre Richmond broke his own school record. in that race, and so that was a good day. Soccer, unfortunately, came to a bit of an abrupt end, but we had a really good ceremony for Brian Mahan, one of the all-time winningest soccer coaches in the state, boys and girls combined. We will miss him. The boys soccer program will definitely be losing a lot. The legacy piece, the experience, all that stuff when you lose a coach of his stature. And the hallways will lose a lot too. I mean, that's a guy that's tuned in, that a lot of people know in the community in White Lake and beyond. And so his retirement will leave a hole for sure.
Yeah, and if I can interject real quick, Montague won that match 2-1. That snapped like a 23-year, not match, year, which could be match, but there's some districts and stuff mixed in there. 23-year streak that Whitehall had against Montague in soccer. So
yeah, and Coach, the Montague kids celebrated, and they should have. I mean, it was a huge win for their program, and congrats to them. And it was proud to see. As an athletic director, I mean, I've been in that spot where you just get a devastating postseason loss as a coach. On top of that, it's on your field. On top of that, it's the last match he's going to coach. And Coach Mahan handled it with class and handled it great. And our kids did too. And it wasn't the result we expected to see, but it was heartening to see the reaction that we had to it. And we were celebrating ourselves and not getting in the mix of being upset because of their reaction. And their reaction was appropriate and celebratory, and it should have been given the circumstance.
And credit to Brian, too. He stood there and took the questions after the match. We had a reporter there, and I know there were other reporters, too, there, I believe. But he stood there, took the questions, which that's a hard thing to do, too.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably that's one of the last things you want to do at that time.
Right. And he, like I said, he's a veteran. He gets it. And then obviously, volleyball's in the mix. We play for a conference championship tomorrow against Ludington. We'd like to see a big crowd there for senior night. If we win, it's a 3-way tie with Ludington, Montague, and Whitehall in the Lakes. So that's, we've got a nice little crew there. They've got a lot out in front of them. A very competitive district at Fruitport, also with Montague in it as well, and Oak Ridge and OV from our league. And obviously, football's won a few games right now too.
How does that work with volleyball with the divisions? Because it was a mix of the regular season and then the conference tournament. Is it the same thing this year where this is a portion and then that's a portion?
Half and half.
Yep.
Still, just like it was.
Just like it was?
Yep.
Okay. You know a lot about volleyball, right?
A lot of good stuff, yeah. I mean, back in the day, right, I bumped that spike a little bit. No, we're as far as North Muskegon goes, competitive. Panucci's on that squad, and she's, I think, probably college bound at some sport. I know Coach Acker is really excited about what they have on the court there, and hopefully they make some sort of run. I was really trying to get to a Shelby game to see the young lady from Shelby play. I heard she's phenomenal.
Nevaeh Gauthier is how you say her name.
Okay.
She's a sophomore, about 6'1", 6'2", already hearing from all the big dogs.
Right, like
Big
jumps
10.
out of the gym. Yeah. So
she's very good.
I have an opportunity to catch her at some point. So.
Yeah, we've had them both in our gym. North Muskegon will be in our place for a quad next week also with Zealand East and Puffer. Should be a very competitive quad. The North Muskegon and Shelby are both really, really good Division III volleyball programs. Like they will be in the mix in the postseason for sure, from what I've seen and from what Coach Edsel's told me. So I
think they would meet potentially in the regional. So that's where that would be. I believe I'm gonna have to take a closer look at that. But I know you're in a spot as an athletic director and administrator. You can't tip your hand with everything that's said. Some stuff we're just not privy to. I get it, and I don't want to put you in a bad spot. But when you're looking at the football game cancellations that we're seeing, you guys can obviously both chime in on any time, and I've got my own thoughts on it too. But there was 3 in the last 2 weeks, and then another one this week with Orchard View canceling the game with Whitehall this Friday because of a lack of healthy players. I mean, what are you guys' initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things to take into consideration. Health and safety is obviously not the number one. And if you don't have healthy kids and there aren't enough numbers, then, those forfeits are going to happen. Long gone are the days when you have a team of, 16 kids that I played with, and you just went and played and it didn't matter. But I think the bigger question is the playoff situation. And so when you get teams that forfeit and then they start to be real intentional and manipulate schedules and, there's an opening. They could play, but if they do play, they might lose. Now they don't want to lose playoff spot. And so, you know what? We're not going to play. And at the end of the day, kids are missing out on opportunities. And so I hope that those decisions, and they aren't, those conversations are in-depth, deep conversations because kids are missing out on opportunities. That being said, if the MHSAA just let everybody in the playoffs, we wouldn't have to manipulate schedules. We wouldn't have to try to be intentional and really kind of play out the we should play them. No, we shouldn't play them. Just play, and it doesn't matter, and everybody's in. And that, to me, helps solve some of that problem because the forfeits aren't going away. It's the bigger picture to me that needs to be addressed.
Well, and you brought that when we were texting back and forth yesterday, Brian. You mentioned that same thing or a very similar sentiment, like what Indiana does. 8-game schedule and then everyone's in the playoffs. What are your thoughts?
So first to Ken's point, I mean it's not a Muskegon area thing either. I mean it's a Michigan issue, and the playoff system that's been put in place since 2019 is mostly a hybrid of what was originally put in place in 99. In 99, expanded from 4 to 8, expanded to 256 schools. And that system for 20 years served reasonably well. The new correction in 2019 was essentially to try to get smoothed out the bonus points. So you get X amount of points. For those of you who don't know, if you beat a Division I school, you get more points than if you beat the smallest Division 8 schools. And what that's kind of served to do for the schools in the middle, like Whitehall, the really good teams in the middle, like the Whitehalls, the Edwardsburgs, we really struggle to find games. Like our struggle is to find a game that makes sense to us within the nature of the system that we've been handed. And to that end, I mean, Ken's exactly right. Like, we knew that Orchard View was going to pull the plug. And immediately we knew that you're eliminating half the state because no one from 1, 2, or 3, rightfully so, given the parameters of the system, is going to want to test themselves in week 9 against our team. It unfortunately doesn't behoove them. And it's sad, but that's the nature of the system. And Ken's point, it shouldn't be like that. Like it shouldn't be like that. If fill in the blank Division I or Division II wanted a game, and they wanted to come here, I think Tony would have been fine with it, given a different system. But unfortunately, like we scheduled week 1, 2, and 3 this year, we scheduled up, and we had Hastings, Unity, Alpena, 3 bigger schools, because when you start to do the math in the system, that's what we felt we had to do with the team we felt we had. And obviously Sigmund had a big hand in it. I mean, we scheduled big boy football, as my wife likes to say. We played it those 3 weeks, and it got us ready, and we found ourselves in a good position in week 9. And unfortunately, we found ourselves in a position right now where we're just sitting out week 9. And that's not necessarily the worst thing. There are states, and I looked at way too many high school pages the last couple days. There are states that purposefully schedule in buys. Indiana has 6 divisions. The top 2 divisions of football.
Thank you, Indiana.
There's another one. There's another point.
The top 2 divisions of football automatically have a bye between the regular season and the playoffs. So all 6 of their divisions end on the same weekend. So Florida, I mean, Coach Sig's got a lot of experience. Florida automatically has a bye between regular season and playoffs. And so it's not the worst thing in the world for us to have a bye week 9. It's just different compared to the system and compared to what people are used to. The Indiana piece, so there's 497 schools that play football in Michigan this year, 11-man football, 497. We have 256. 256 doubled is 512. There's 497. In Indiana, again, there's a lot of districts that call them sectionals. There's a lot of sectionals that have only 7 teams. It's drawn out of a hat who gets the bye. Completely random, drawn out of a hat. So again, that's another piece that eliminates, like you said, Ken, the scheduling of, okay, we need this, but not this. When you know that bye is coming drawn out of a hat, that's another thing that will eliminate the purposeful kind of intentional scheduling that, again, I have to do in my chair and that a lot of other people have had to do in the last few years.
Now, this is kind of neither here nor there, but I was at the GMA volleyball tournament Saturday at Reese Puffer getting some photos. Saw Cliff Sandy, so I was chatting with him, and they scheduled Lansing Everett for this week. This happened a few weeks ago because they knew that Holland wasn't on the schedule anymore. and this is just a sports writers kind of local sports writers. I wouldn't say it was a dream, but it would be kind of cool. Well, what if they could play Whitehall? I don't know if that would really, if either team would want that, honestly. Especially Puffer, because you're Division 3, I think. There's a chance you could lose that game, and even if you do win it, how much do you have to gain?
Right.
I mean, like I said, they've already got Everett on the schedule. If that game ends up happening, I heard Everett had to cancel last week. But similarly, kind of along the lines of people were asking me last week, Ludington and North Muskegon were both free. Why didn't they play each other? I'm like, well, think about it from Ludington's standpoint. You're Division 4, and you have less to gain doing that than taking the forfeit win over Orchard View. So
yeah, I mean, we were in the same spot. They canceled last week. Holton did, and had an opportunity to play Big Rapids. But if you're in Big Rapids shoes, why? Why would you do that, right? And so there's nothing to gain on there. And so now we have two teams who miss an opportunity, and those seniors don't get that back. And so it just goes to, I mean, the MHSA has done it before. Everyone got in COVID year, and it worked out well. There's no reason you can't go 8 regular season games. You can seed the thing, do all your bonus points, give the 1 seeds a bye week 9, and let it play out. It just seems so simple to me, But, who are we?
So you alluded to this, too, a few minutes ago, Brian, about how this isn't just a Muskegon area issue. It's a statewide issue, because you might hear from some people out there that say, well, did the West Michigan Conference get it right with the schools they brought in? Now they're all of a sudden your first fall season, you're having teams cancel and stuff. It's like, well, A, that's a small sample size, but B, it's not exclusive to the West Michigan Conference.
Right. And it is unfortunate that in the first year of this scheduling situation has taken place in the first year of expansion. You don't want this ever to happen, but unfortunately, when you look around the state, and you wonder if we did go to the Indiana model, how much of this would have taken place. And quite frankly, going way backward, if it would have got expanded from 8 to 14, that's another podcast. But when you look at where we're at right now with the 14, it's not everyone really cares about everyone else's pocket. I mean, we at Whitehall, yeah, we're in this with Holton, but really what they're doing doesn't really affect us because we're in divisions now. So from that standpoint, it's part of it's a trickle-down effect. It's part of the puzzle, but it doesn't really have that much of an effect on us. I mean, if North Muskegon would have if that would have happened in North Muskegon this week, I mean, everyone would have, like, the best Whitehall team in decades against the best North Muskegon team in decades. That would have been a great week 9, and I don't know if we would have played it. I mean, I just wouldn't have made sense. Again, given the system, given where both programs, athletic directors, coaches have scheduled and put themselves in this event today, and that would have been a great game 3 years ago. But now I don't know if we would have played it.
Yeah, I don't think it would have. I mean, there's nothing to gain on either side,
Right.
And so, when it's all based on points, I don't know. It feels yucky at times, and unfortunate,
Sure.
because kids are losing out.
North Muskegon, by the way, has at least a share of the WMC Rivers title. They can go for the outright title this week at Shelby. So, and then Whitehall, obviously the opening, it's, almost 11:30 a.m. Monday. This will come out Thursday. You guys will obviously have that decision made, or whether that's you're going to find a replacement or not. And that was going to happen very soon and early in this week, right?
Right. And the phone's been pretty dead. And unfortunately for the JV aspect as well, like that, I think that's quite frankly the more disappointing end for us, is to only have 8 JV games. Certainly for our coaches and kids, and it's just where we're at, and in kind of looking at other states, like there are states, I mean, Wisconsin and Nebraska, the state association schedules football. And their kind of playoffs are kind of funky, that if you get X amount of conference wins, you're in automatically. And then they schedule non-conference, and you submit, we'd like to play these people, we don't want to play these people, and they build out schedules on a 2-year rotating basis. There are a lot of different systems that I think work. Now, every state has a different amount of schools and different geography, and Michigan's Thanksgiving football is as cool and awesome as it gets. I mean, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, how many people go down to Detroit and hang out together, and it's a trek that a lot of people make, and it's something that the MHSAA, probably rightfully so, is reticent to move off of that weekend. So if you start with that weekend and go backwards, that's the calendar that we have right now, and 8 divisions plus 11 plus 8-man plus all those things, like there aren't many states that have the amount of teams that we have and how many divisions we have as well. And that probably, again, is when you build out those weekends and you want to build excitement for your sport, and they've done that well in building that weekend out.
Yeah, it's really 10 divisions, right? 2
certainly
8
is.
11 mans and then 2 8-mans.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of trophies. It's a lot of teams, and I think that the intention was good in that it was intended to drive a lot of, hey, we've got a chance to win because there are only 60-some teams in our division. We're one of 60-some that we can go out and get this. But unfortunately, I think not a lot of teams are in a position to see crossing the finish line as a realistic goal right now. So
yeah, switching gears, we're going to talk a little bit about, we like to do this each week, talk about the game of the week that happened, and then a little bit about the game of the week coming up. We live stream the West Michigan Conference games of the week each week, and last week wasn't much of a game to live stream. So Oak Ridge was all over Ravenna 48-6. A couple things I want to kind of highlight from that. One, and I use it in the headline. I hesitated a little bit, but I ended up doing it just because the Oak Ridge players I talked to were pretty convincing and pretty passionate about their comments and their remarks after the game. I'm not sure when this started, and Brian, you're a Ravenna alum, as am I, but some Ravenna folks, I don't know if it's a limited group or what, started calling Oak Ridge up the road. They won't call them by Oak Ridge, they'll call them up the road. Personally, I think it's foolish. I'm not a big fan of it. They can do what they want, but I've never been a big fan of it, especially when in that rivalry now it's 43-12-1 in favor of Oak Ridge. And Ravenna has competed in a lot of those games that they've lost, but it's like, man, why are we doing this? I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that? And did that have a bearing on the game? I don't know, but it doesn't help, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the overall outcome of that game, if I'm Ravenna, I'm probably not saying much other than, hey, let's strap it on and play Friday and see what happens. Yeah. I was at that game Friday too and stayed till halftime because it was out of hand, but Oak Ridge just physically dominated them, and they looked really good. Ravenna played hard, but Oak Ridge was just a more physical, powerful team at that point.
I get it; they're a bigger school, but they've been a bigger school for quite a while.
And Ravenna's competed in the past,
and they competed in the past. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm making too much of it, but I even get annoyed when Michigan and Ohio State do it. It's like, just come on, let's stop being foolish here. But what do you think?
Unless Michigan wins, then it's fine.
then it's okay.
Yeah.
The first, I give Justin Ego credit because their Ravenna's schedule this year. I mean, they've got Beale City, who's legit. They kept Montague. They kept Oak Ridge. That's a schedule. I mean, and again, not to go back to it, but they knew the parameters of the system. You're scheduling an elite D8 and 2 high-profile, much bigger schools. If you get one of those games, you're going to be okay playoff point. Right. You get 2 of them, you're in a really good spot. And so that's a great. I commend them for doing that because they easily could have went elsewhere.
No, stop ducking the question. Up the road.
Man, up the road, it doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't make what
I don't.
There's
I've never
no
liked
time
it.
Where there could be a Ravenna Oak Ridge. There could be a 3-hour after dark podcast with Ravenna Oak Ridge people, and at no point I've been called a lot of things from Oak Ridge people. Up the road has never been one of them. You know what I mean? Like
no, it's just maybe. And again, does that stuff really matter? Probably not. But I do fully support you in your comments about Ravenna. That takes some guts to schedule the way they did when, with the enrollment and things being as they are. And they did compete well against that non-league schedule with the exception of the Oak Ridge game Friday.
Yeah.
The Beale City game they let slip away, had some cramps and stuff. And then the Montague game, they got the W in that one. And Montague struggled, but still, that's a little bit bigger school that you're getting some valuable points from.
I think some of that stuff is noise. It's 2022 and everyone's got to put something out there for other people to get a rise out of. As a coach, I'm sure that Justin and that crew did their best to circle and say, push all that out. And you wonder how much of that ever really enters a post-game quote if instead of 48-6, if it's 28-26,
right.
And I think some of that stuff you get a lot more time to reflect as kids and coaches in the second half of that game than you would in a tight contest.
No, I agree with. I think there's something to be said for that too. And one of the kids I interviewed said, he goes, yeah, they can let them talk like that. We'll talk with our pads.
Fair enough. And they did.
But anyhow, that's that. But to me, though, and that was just one of the elements, but to me, what was really cool about that game, or about, that night, was it's their cancer benefit game. And each year Oak Ridge does that, and they put the family members' names on the jerseys, the special jerseys they wear, and then they have sponsors for those jerseys and present them to the people who sponsored them. And so they, at the very beginning of that ceremony, they honored Keegan Swan, the Ravenna senior with leukemia, who wears number 77. Number 79 for Oak Ridge, sophomore Braden Peterson presented his number 79 jersey to Keegan in that. And I thought that was just really cool. We captured video of it and everything, and it was a pretty neat thing. So
yeah, that's one of the great things about, there's so many great things about high school sports, but things like that you see happening more often. Lowell kind of blew it up with the pink game down there and all the money that they raised, but you're seeing more of that kind of trickle into other schools and supporting causes and kids and communities. So yeah, that's just great stuff.
Yeah, we did that this year, the number of years before I arrived at Whitehall with Montague and Hope and breast cancer awareness. It was a little bit weird this year because we started selling tickets in August for a pink out game that was always in October, but then was in September with the new league. So that was a little bit different, but we've still the last 2 years raised a lot of money for Hope Scarves, a great breast cancer awareness organization that does really good things for people going through that fight. And so we've been really able to benefit a lot of people because of that game. And I know Montague's got their own side of it, and we both sell shirts. There's a huge demand for shirts. We sold, I think, 350 shirts this year, to a week. What was it, 4 game? We were only in school for a few weeks, and it's something that a lot of people, we do a pass the hat in the first quarter, call it the Miracle Minute, that benefited the family of Caden Boyer, who's going through some stuff, and a Whitehall freshman. And it's good to see the community come together for events like that, and the event like for Keegan's family.
No, that was classy by on all accounts. I was fortunate to be able to tell the story of Tate Panucci too in our profile of the week.
Yeah,
and
I saw that.
They've been through some stuff. I know you've been very supportive with the family as well. You got your hair buzzed a couple years ago.
I did, yeah. They're actually neighbors. They live 2 houses down from us. So
yeah, so you were the first one in the chair, if I remember correctly.
I was, and Tate had no mercy when he scalped me. I'm like, Tate, bro, easy. You're not trying to take skin off, just the hair. So,
no, he went all in on that.
He went all in, and I just saw Tate yesterday around the corner picking up lawn. He's got a little paid side job, and we just were talking about sports and stuff, and he is really eager to put the pads back on. And so when that happens, it's going to be a special day because, Tate's a fighter, and it's going to happen. So
that's got to be tough for him to, obviously in big picture things, he's in a great spot. So he's doing really well with his battle with leukemia. And obviously, fingers crossed and praying that continues for him. But, North Muskegon's having a good season in football with the varsity and JV. I don't know if he'd be on the varsity or JV team, but he would, he'd be a contributor on either of those teams probably.
Absolutely. He's always been in the mix with that group of kids. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been a big
who's
piece.
the other young man again? I don't want to leave him out at North Muskegon. We've mentioned him on the podcast before.
Yeah, Ethan Bates is a junior, would have played this year. He's back into fighting his cancer situation. So a lot of prayers go out to him and his family. Mm-hmm. There's some meal trains on Facebook to help out with that situation, but we're hoping that he comes back. He's also a baseball player, so maybe he's back for the spring seasons. But cancer sucks, and kids shouldn't have to go through that. And so we're just fortunate that we all live in communities that support and help those families out.
Yep, we're pulling for all those kids with that. So, but looking ahead at this week's game of the week, again, how much of a game will it be, we don't know. It's Oak Ridge at Montague, and Montague was really I wasn't expecting to see what I saw Friday when Manistee beat them 50-20. It's like I just didn't see that coming. You guys, what are your thoughts on maybe where Montague is at right now in their season? I was surprised.
I really was surprised. I thought it would be competitive. I thought ultimately Montague wins that game. But Ravenna just put it, or not Ravenna, Manistee just put it on them. And then we got to watch some film of Manistee and Shelby. And so, they're kind of a double tight kind of veer look, wing T look, and they just shoved it down their throats. So A little surprised, but Manastee's up and coming, and they've got some dudes up there that can play.
Mm-hmm.
The Montague district's tough. I mean, it's West Catholic's legit.
Do we think Montague's probably going to, even if they lose Oak Ridge, they're still probably going to get in, right?
I think it's going to be
so.
close. Yeah. Kent City, Kent City lost to my former employer, White Pigeon, this weekend, a really good wing T team, and then Catholic's in the mix there too. So that's Montague really needs I would assume a really good showing for them to catapult themselves into what's going to be a very competitive D6 district.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that we'll see what happens with that game of the week. It's our final game of the week of the season because we don't live stream games in the postseason. The MHSA has rights to that. So we will be doing some audio streams, though. We'll be, I'm sure we'll be picking up quite a few, however long they go, Whitehall games, and then whoever else. Looks like North Muskegon Ravenna could be back on and maybe round one again if all things play out. We'll see.
Right.
But yeah, so and that's a great segue for to talk about the playoff picture again. I don't think it's changed probably a ton since we talked about last week, but it's always fun to kind of look at it. This Friday is week 9 of the regular season. Already, yeah. Can you believe that?
Flew by.
Even though you go outside for a while, you feel like it's week 9
for sure.
So, but Selection Sunday this Sunday, and that's always exciting. Even though these teams nowadays they pretty much know whether they're in or not ahead of time, just because of people like Snooze to You and such. But right now in Division 4, we'll start there. We got, again, I think it's very much the same as last week. We got Whitehall playing Big Rapids, hosting Big Rapids, and Fruitport Ludington the other side of that. So we got our thoughts on this last weekend, but we got Brian here, and he's seen quite a bit of football. So, what do you think about that draw if that happens for Whitehall?
So Fruitport's legit. They play in a really good conference. They can score the ball. That Fruitport team, if we were to get past a Big Rapids team that we haven't seen, Fruitport week 2, I think would be a great game. It'd be a great crowd. Whitehall and Fruitport haven't seen each other in football in a lot. We play each other in a ton of sports. There's some familiarity in a lot of places.
2 years ago, I think, is when they played.
It's 2 years ago now?
They played 2 years ago in the playoffs. That was at Whitehall. That was a weird year. It was kind of, I think that was a blur to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I'm regular season-wise, sorry. I know it's been a long time since they've seen each other.
Yep.
Long time in the regular season. The way that our kids are mentally into it right now, I'm hopeful that the playoffs, it's a battle. Like, it's a 1 week at a time battle. I think that last year definitely will be a good landing spot for them to go back to. That game at Cadillac was a real difficult loss and something that I know motivated a lot of our kids and coaches. And sometimes losses are more motivational than wins. And it was not something that our kids want to relive. I know that at that level of playoffs or coaching staff for that matter as well. And then we have a lot of people. It's funny how many people keep telling me about South Christian, and I can't only imagine how much Sig and CJ and all those guys, like, there's such a long time to get from today to South Christian, right? And it's long for South Christian. They've got some. You
got to get there.
There's a Hastings team in the way that week 2 gave us everything we wanted. They were good. Like, there's a lot of stair steps to get to that point that sometimes, again, in this chair, you want kids to enjoy the ride as much as possible, because coaches have that ability, the good ones, to enjoy today as much as they do down the road. But I really hope that our kids do enjoy the ride, and I think that almost this, provided we don't have a week 9 game, it almost gives you a baby bit of perspective to both reflect and then reset and go on to the second season. So
it's a reminder. So you got a finite number of games that you get to play.
Right.
Yeah, and you don't know when you're going to come back. Like, you can't take for granted you're going to be in the playoffs again, because you don't know. And there's a lot that can happen between now and 2 or 3 weeks. And a lot of luck's needed too. And just looking down that list, like Edwardsburg, they're going to be tough. Like, they come in and play Muskegon was last year or something, 2 years ago. But
Yeah.
they're always
They're
competitive.
traditionally, they're always right there.
They're tough. and
Another
so-
wing T power
Right.
team. Not the strongest conference traditionally. Three Rivers is really good in their league this year.
The Wolverine
Really
Conference,
athletic. Edwardsburg has a playoff tradition. Like
Right.
that's another program that they've seen enough playoff games. In
You just sounded
October,
like
November.
Dusty Fairfield right there a little bit. They have a playoff tradition.
That was not. You were talking about a Dusty After Dark podcast. That's like a three-parter right there.
That was at like 1 p.m. on a Tuesday, Dusty. and by the way, who was it? I think it was Jason Hutton I was talking to at the North Muskegon Ravenna game. He goes, "Okay, can you clear this up for me? You're from there. Is it Ravenna or Ravenna?" I said, "I don't know. It depends who you ask. Ask
Right,
Dusty
that's true.
Fairfield. He'll tell you Ravenna every single time."
It depends where you're from. That's the answer. That's the best
So if
way.
you're not from there originally, then it's Ravenna.
It's as quick a one-syllable word as you can possibly make it. Ravenna. If you're from there, you need to stretch it out because the town's so small. You got to stretch out the name. That's what I was told growing up.
But back on point here, is Whitehall going to hang on to home field advantage, or are they going to, depending on, South Christian, I think, is playing Forest Hills Eastern this week. If South Christian gets that win, are they going to jump Whitehall?
Our analytics and math department believe that we will be the one seed.
No matter what?
That's what our analytics and math department believes. Now, math is hard, and we'll see, but that's what we believe.
Because my next question is, and again, we had this discussion off air about, maybe best fields, best stadiums and stuff. And if Whitehall gets to that point, and if South Christian gets to that point where they play each other, would it behoove Whitehall more to play on grass or on turf?
Well, that's a good question. Our kids enjoyed. I mean, we played at turf the first 3 weeks of the year, and our 3 road games, and it's no secret we've got some speed, and I think that our kids. I mean, now Ridge has it as well. So I mean, we're playing half our games on turf right now, and so it's not anything that would be a foreign concept to us. That's a great question. That's not one I've asked Sig. I'm sure he would have thoughts on it. That would be public and private. I think that
Is that for the After the Dark
that's
podcast?
correct. Yes, that's the way after dark.
All right.
That's the after party after dark podcast. Sig really. Like I said, we've only had 3 home games this year also, and so he's really excited to be home for the second season.
And that's the thing. I mean, do you want to give that up? If you have that option, would you want to even give that up? That home field advantage.
If you're built on speed and your home grass is a mess, I almost think you have to give it up. If you're a 2 tight end, wing T, shove it down your throats team, I'll take the bad turf all day long.
But I don't know as much about South. Aren't they more of a wide open type?
Yeah, a little bit. And I'll tell you, our maintenance department, Rick Blankstrom in our maintenance department, we're one of the few schools now. We still play soccer and football in the same field like North Muskegon, and it takes a toll on it.
But
it really does.
You watch it too, though, don't you? You don't, like, to a certain point, you're not going to let.
Correct. And we play youth football games on it, but we don't practice on it. We're blessed that we do have a lot of practice facilities that our maintenance department does a great job with. And so we're only playing contests on it, which helps us a ton. But it's still, I mean, it's 36 and crappy outside right now. I mean, the weather turns in a dime, and you really have to take care of your field if you want it to to be playable at a high level in early November.
Right.
So, yeah, before we move on from Division 4, I got to ask you got to call your shot for Division 4. What's Whitehall going to do?
We're going to play at home in week 10 against a very good opponent who's going to be 0-0.
And we're going to take it week by week.
Hey, you're not on the coaching staff. You can tell me what you think.
Look, I'm telling you what I think, and this is the same thing I tell everybody. Like, I see all these people, like, even the jokes about make your Ford Field reservations, like that stuff, and maybe that's the coach in me. Like, man, that stuff is just 2021. I think that Sig would wholeheartedly agree. Like, that loss at Cadillac, like that stuck. I mean, that was tough. It was tough in a lot of levels, and I think that our kids really are fueled by that more. I know our coaching staff's fueled by that.
Don't assume anything. And I can tell with this group that they haven't. Like from what I can see, they've just worked their tails off in the off season and coming into the season, and they've just been laser sharp with that focus. And so it'd be curious to see once you get to that second season, as you call it, if they can maintain that. Because if they can, they're just going to be a really tough out.
Yeah, nobody in that locker room, from head coach to the team manager, is saying we're making it to Ford Field. That's not a thought, right? Well, who's next? Let's go beat them.
Right.
Who's next? Let's go beat
That's
them.
how it's got to be.
Right.
And there are coaches I've known that, and I've seen that love talking about that stuff, and that is just not even in my mind. It's not even a thought.
Yeah, it can't be.
Right.
It
can't be as long as you're working on that process of, okay, look, hey, Big Rapids, Ludington, whomever week 1 is, like, guys, they're 0-0.
Right.
And we have to be as sharp as possible to get through it, to get to where we need to go. Right. And with the amount of seniors that we have in our program right now as well, that's another part of it too. If you think about seniors in an athletic team right now, like their freshman year, they probably weren't on varsity. Sophomore year, COVID. Last year, the loss we had against Cadillac. So they've had 4 really unique years in their world as well, and they're looking for normalcy, whether it's in a math class or in football, and they want a good normal experience as much as possible, and to get that taste out of their mouth from the postseason last year.
Yeah. So switching gears to Division 5, if these projections hold, and we're talking about Oak Ridge here, Oak Ridge will take this because they are in a district. They host Shepherd. At this, according to Snooze to You, again, who does a great job with these projections and his mapatology. They're in a district with Belding and Tri-County. Tri-County picked up Muskegon Catholic for week 9. I think they picked that up a couple weeks ago, something like that. So, and that's one that, frankly, I expect Catholic to win that one. But Tri-County's had a great season. They won their league. But I still think that's a very winnable district for Oak Ridge. You can't assume anything, but again, I think it's a winnable. But then you're sent north in that region. The other side of that, the other district in that region is Kingsford, Ogama Heights, Gladwin, and Kingsley. We've talked about Gladwin before. They're having one of their special seasons, but even at 8-0, they're at 48.5 points, and that's almost 8 points fewer than Oak Ridge, which is 7-1. It kind of tells you a little bit about the schedule.
Yeah, I look at that district, and I think North Muskegon would like to be in that district, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Very winnable.
Yeah, so Shepherd and Gladwin are both in the Jack Pine, where I came from Clare. Shepherd, Blue Jays, by the way, for their mascot. Great field. Maple Syrup Festival every week in October. Gorgeous. Shepherd is a program that had a lot of success in years past, and they had a new staff a few years ago. They're building it in the right direction. Gladwin is legit. Gladwin will spread it out and throw it around. They have some really good athletes. That a Gladwin game would be interesting for Oak Ridge. Just with styles make fights, and Gladwin's going to spread it out a ton. They're going to throw it. Where's that at point wise? Would that be at Oak Ridge?
That would be at Oak Ridge if that happens. And actually, OakRidge has the most points in that whole region.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay. So, a Gladwin Oak Ridge game would be interesting. And Belding, I think, Belding Tri-County would be an interesting game too.
Yeah.
Belding 7-1. They lost to a pretty good they lost to Cadillac, who has Belding's played a pretty tough schedule as well. Tri-County, it'll be a good gauge to see where they're at against Catholic this week. It is at Tri-County, so that'll be a good gauge to see where the Vikings are heading to the postseason also.
And where I'm going with this is that, for once, Oak Ridge would not be in the same region as Grand Rapids Catholic Central if this plays out. They'd be, according to this, Grand Rapids Catholic's in Region 2. So if that matchup with Oak Ridge and GRCC did happen, it would be the semifinals. So I think if you're Oak Ridge, you take your chances with that. But again, like you guys said, you can't overlook anybody this time of year. And,
right.
It's exciting when you're a program like Oak Ridge and, being in the mix and having that shot, and especially if you have that shot to host a few playoff games, that's great.
Absolutely.
On turf too, Ken.
And on turf, as it should be.
As the good Lord intended it.
Right.
All right, Division 6. Now, this is pretty interesting. We got a couple conference teams that are projected for the same region, Manistee and Montague. It would be quite a stretch to see them squaring off again, getting through to that regional final, because in the top half you've got Reed City hosting Sanford Meridian, Clare, and Manistee. Clare is hosting Manistee now. Brian knows a little bit about Clare.
I do. So turf also, Ken. So Clare spread veer right off the Whitehall system. Would be an interesting, again, very different matchup with Manistee. Claire's a perennial playoff power. First-year coach took over for
legend,
Kelly Luplow, Kelly Luplow, Hall of Fame coach, awesome guy. Steven Spranger's the coach. Was on staff for a number of years. Is there. A lot of the same pieces are in place as far as the veer and trying to spread you out a little bit. They're not quite, I don't think, size-wise where they have been in the past, Claire, as far as physicality. But again, Gladwin took it to him. Gladwin, I think, spread him out and threw the ball around the yard a little bit from what I saw. And Claire has seen wing T. There's a couple of schools in that league that run the wing Ts that wouldn't be too far out of their skill set to defend Manistee.
Any thoughts on that? On those?
No,
that district. In the other district, you got Grandpa's West Catholic versus Montague at this point. Now, things have changed in the last couple of weeks.
Right.
Where teams have shifted in this district, but it's been the same 4 teams: West Catholic, Montague, then Kent City. At this point, hosting Muskegon Catholic Central. Again, I mean that's a tough draw for Montague, and I think that's a tough draw for Kent City.
Yeah,
quite frankly.
Out of all those, I like Reed City to come out of there. They're, a traditional powerhouse in the playoffs, and just some big old boys that run wing T and ram it down your throat. And so a Reed City anybody matchup would be fun to watch.
Yeah, 6 on our side of the state that's loaded.
Yeah,
there's a
tough.
lot of good football teams in there. It's kind of wild actually when you really get in that. And there's some teams that aren't in the playoffs in 6 that are not bad either. Like that's a really loaded group of schools.
Yeah.
It's a competitive playoff field for sure.
And the question is, will Montague hang in there if they lose to Oak Ridge? Are they still getting in? I think they probably will, because they'll get some good amount of bonus, playoff points. I don't call it bonus points, but playoff points from that game. So, but they're, it's probably going to be close. But
and Catholic, for those who don't know, is D6 because of their co-op. They're playing a lot of playoff teams. They played a really good Centerville team last week on the road. They're taking on Tri-County, who's on the right side of the bubble right now. I mean, that's another team in the area in D6 who is a traditional power. They've got a great sophomore quarterback. They're going to take it to you. They're going to be a really tough team. They've played a bunch of one-score games this year. Yeah, they're playoff ready also.
And they're and they're a team that, one of those teams that some might have considered, are they a fit for West Michigan Conference? They didn't get invited, so they're an independent now. So that's what they're dealing with, but they face a tough schedule. So that's. But I think they'll be prepared for the playoffs when they get in.
They're just quietly taking care of business.
And then you talk about teams who have like co-op situations. Hard is another one. They won't be mentioned anywhere here, but they're 6-2 entering the game against Ravenna this week, which to me that's a toss-up game. And but even if they win, they may still not get in. It's because they're Division 5, because they're a co-op with Walkerville, and I don't think they get a whole lot from Walkerville, but they are a co-op with them.
Well, and so I just wanted to talk about that real quick. So, 7-2, they don't get in. In past years, they would have, right? The 6-win threshold. And then you look at some of the teams, especially D7. You're going to find 2-7 teams, 3-5. Like, optically, it just looks weird that a team's going to get in at 2-7, and here's Hart, who's 7-2, and so that's just another level to me where the playoff situation really has to be scrutinized and looked at, and trying to do what's best. 7-2 teams should be in the playoffs. Period. Doesn't matter who you schedule, you should be in. And it's unfortunate Hart might not get in, right? And you're going to have 2-7 teams that do. And thanks to their scheduling, whatever. But again, it goes back to what Brian and I talked about earlier. We need to just look at the system, right, and consider other options.
No, but it is. It's because of the non-league schedule part. It's because they're who you're playing in your division as well. But yeah, so switching to Division 7, we mentioned earlier, but there looks like a North Muskegon Ravenna Part 2 for the second straight year. Could very well face each other right away if these things hold. And looks like Ithaca just ever so slightly has an edge over North Muskegon for being the number 1 seed in the district.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that can change or not. Do you know who Ithaca's got this week?
I think they have Shepherd, if I'm not mistaken. think. Yeah, we don't think we can jump them if we both win. So, which I'm okay with because their stadium's freaking sweet. So I'd love to go there and check that out.
It's a nice place.
Their jumbotron is ridiculous.
So I understand that that Larry Witham, North Muskegon coach, went up and saw St. Francis. Texted him a little bit, but I heard St. Francis is just a bear this year. They're good every year. You can kind of say that most years, but really tough. They scheduled a game with Lawton. They both had an opening last week, and they beat Lawton 42-7, I believe was the final. That was a week or 2 weeks after Lawton pounded Schoolcraft, which Catholic beat Schoolcraft, but barely.
Right. And then Lawton scheduled Detroit Loyola this week.
Yeah.
Talk about not backing down, Lawton.
No.
That takes some
so that's
courage.
tough. I mean, in that same region with St. Francis, that's a tough draw.
Yeah.
But, hey, you got to get there first before you can worry about playing them.
Right. The one school that kind of has us scratching our head, and I'm going to say it wrong, is that the UP school, Lance.
Yeah.
They're the only Division 7 UP school, and they might not make it. And so how does that shift everything?
Yeah.
Right? So they're really kind of the one that people are watching in terms of how the alignment falls. Because without a UP school, that kind of pushes things a different direction.
Yeah.
I think it does play Shepherd. And the going back to your co-op comment, the another thing that the system does, it was intended essentially to try to help out the smaller schools, like the White Pigeons, that you're trying to get them to schedule. You want people to play good 7s and 8s as much as possible, and the good 7s and 8s in this system, when they do get those skins, that bumps them up a ton. That's probably the one thing that the schedule's done, maybe unintentionally, is really help the 7s and 8s when they do get a win over a 4-5 or a really good 4-5 or 6. Those bonus points and that amount allows a 7 or an 8 to then schedule other really tough 7s and 8s or play in a good league with 7s and 8s. It's not the Hearts of the world that happen to be a 5 playing a lot of 6s and 7s. It really does. It hurts them for their conference schedule for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we've mentioned this before, Ken, kind of switching gears again, but you're working with BSN now. Just want to touch on it real quick before we close this one up. But, you talk to a lot of administrators, be it principals, superintendents, ADs, and so forth. You got one sitting right across from you right now. What's that been like? What's the vibe you're getting from schools these days with where high school sports are at, and what's just the general overall feel of how things are going now? Not just West Michigan Conference exclusive, but just in general with how things are, what the challenges are, et cetera.
Right. Well, first of all, a couple things. One, the hardest working people in a school district, 1, ADs, 2, front office secretaries. And it's been that way forever. So kudos to all the ADs, yourself included, Brian, and all the work that you do. Those are tireless, thankless hours that people don't know that ADs put in. So kudos to them. And then a shout out to Ryan Patterson, my fellow BSN employee that kind of services the school areas and has done a good job for Whitehall with their needs. And so I told him I'd give him a shout out today. So yeah, but I have had the opportunity to kind of travel up and down the lakeshore a little bit to kind of check out schools. And to me, the overall impression is that schools care. It's a big piece of what they do, right? It's educational athletics, but a source of community school pride comes from the athletic programs. They want to look good. They want to play good. They want to be good sports. They want to, capture what that community stands for. And so as I leave all those buildings, it's like, we want to service them the best they can because they deserve it. And those kids deserve it. And those communities deserve it because it's a big piece of why kids go to school. Ultimately, you got to go to school, you got to do the stuff, you got to read and write and all that good jazz. But a lot of the reason why some kids go to school at all is to play sports. And so, schools care about that stuff. The biggest hurdle is just the financial piece. It's frustrating. We want to give them the best and give them all that they deserve, and the finances aren't there a lot of the times. And so that's frustrating because kids lose out on that. And so if there's anything BSN can do for you, just let me know.
Yeah, I would echo, and just to offshoot from Ken's comments. The one thing I was at Claire during the pandemic when it hit, and then the following year, and then being at Whitehall now, the one thing that I think that people need to understand, kids want normalcy as much as possible. Like kids want it to be 2018 again. They want to do normal things. And that's the one thing that I think that schools can provide kids is that sense of normalcy as much as possible, of the day-to-day, grind out the math test, get the National Honor Society stuff, like all that stuff that goes in a traditional high school experience. That's the stuff that kids genuinely want at the heart of it. And it's social media aside and all the trappings that come with high school aside, that's the bottom line that kids really want. And that's the challenge right now, I think, for a lot of people, is to try to give them that when there's a lot of noise in the real world that hits kids a lot of the time. Kids really do want homecoming. They want to play hard on a Friday night in front of their friends. They want normalcy. They want what their older brothers and sisters and moms and dads had. And that's the number one challenge and goal at the same time that I think educators and coaches try to give kids, is the same experience that they had when they were in high school. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in that position.
Oh, those are great thoughts. I appreciate you guys in your positions sharing that perspective that a lot of us don't get. And, I'm always, in my job, I'm always looking at what's the next big game or what's the next big thing coming up. But it is important to remember about the normalcy piece of things, because it is easy to forget what these kids have gone through. So, but you guys did a great job. Before we say goodbye, though, we have to thank our sponsors again. That includes Grieve Law, Big Stone Therapies, Greenridge Realty with Chris Dykem and Sarah Reel, North Grove Brewers, Foundation Systems of Michigan and John Botten, Coldwell Banker with Dave Dusenberry, Scheid Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, and our title sponsors, Van Dyke Mortgage Lakeshore and Durgan Insurance Group. Thanks a lot, again, Brian, for being on with us. And if you want this to become a regular thing, I can be bribed.
Okay. Well, we didn't get to my quarterback rankings. I have
We'll do that real quick before we say goodbye. We can do that next time if you come back.
There's nothing about me that's quick, Scott. You know this. There's 2,000 words right there on why Justin Herbert's only a tier 2 quarterback right now. Okay.
But how about Josh Allen though? Next level.
It's amazing to watch. That the hurdle over that guy was unbelievable.
Crazy.
And how big he is.
Right. My question is, how long is he going to be able to do this? Just because usually those stout quarterbacks don't last real long.
But he can fling it too. I was really impressed with him last night.
It's such a fun game to watch. Like my wife's a somewhat casual football watcher, unless Mahomes, Allen, or Brady's playing. Then she's like locked in. It's hard not to be like, just to appreciate the things that they can do. It's
how many TVs did you have rolling down in your basement last night?
We had 3. We had all 3 going.
When's number 4 and number 5 coming?
Soon. Hopefully soon.
There's the back room back here.
Yeah, there's plenty in the back room. We better not.
So those TVs are as babies, basically.
Fair enough.
No, I don't know about babies. They're nurtured. They're not part of the family.
Not like George and Lenny?
No, they're
not like in the family pictures.
They're cats.
Not yet, but there's a new Christmas card coming, Ken. So let's.
The very temperamental Beebe cats, George and Lenny.
Well, they're temperamental when my friends come over and smack them a little bit around. So yes, but no, we had all 3 going. It's hard not to. NFL Sundays are good when you've got the Red Zone on one TV and then the Lions on one TV, but then you can put something for the wife on the third TV, and then you can watch Red Zone muted. It's a great Sunday.
So what'd you put on yesterday with no Lions playing?
Well, we had Lamar on one TV, tier 3 quarterback, by the way. I don't know if you can win with Lamar or not, Ken. I don't know if you can win with him. They're going to franchise him for a few years.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you right now.
So Lamar on one, Red Zone on one, and then I don't even know what Jess was watching. Something I don't know.
So can I just?
This is getting edited out, right? This part, she's not going to hear this, right?
Hear it all.
What, Ken?
Well, I was just going to add real quick. That Tennessee-Alabama game.
I didn't see it. I was so bummed because I thought it was an 8:00 game.
Oh my gosh!
And I saw that. I'm like, you got to be kidding. Well, I was working anyway. I was covering tennis for the MHSA all day Saturday, and I mean all day.
Phenomenal.
I got home right for the second half. Those games are. It's astounding when you have Tennessee, Alabama on one TV, and Illinois, Minnesota, and the other TV, and you even think if they're playing the game by the same rules.
Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was so incredible. I got the Youngs invited me over to watch it there, and the more entertaining thing than the game was to watch. Was watching Jill Young watch Tennessee because she's a diehard.
Oh wow!
And so the emotional roller coaster.
What would happen if Tennessee and Michigan played like in the playoff? What would happen in the Young household? Because Paul's obviously a Michigan fan.
No, I think the boy Youngs would have to go to a different house because Jill owns that house when Tennessee's on. And kudos to her buffalo chicken dip too, by the way. But yeah, what a phenomenal game, and just that whole environment. It was just a great Saturday night of football.
That's awesome. I am bummed I missed that, man. What a game.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow. Well, anyway, thanks a lot again, fellas, for joining this podcast and bringing some life to it. You guys do a great job. So, and everyone else watching, hope your week's going well, and we'll see you soon.